This is Democracy Watch, Mark. Today is the day we've been waiting for because today we would finally find out what the justification was for the FBI to execute a search warrant in Fulton County and grab all of those ballots from 2020. We now have those answers. Mark, can you explain what we found out?
Yeah, it turns out there wasn't much there. Look, I didn't have high expectations. It's not like I thought that the Trump Justice Department, had found some magic bullet or some hidden evidence. But I did kind of think that they would come up with some new lies. Instead, this is just the same old recycled lies. I mean, this document, this affidavit that was used to effectuate a search warrant in 2026 reads like just the same grievances that we heard in 2020 and 2021 and 2022. It's as if they just recorded Donald Trump at one of his rallies and then just transcribed it and added some, jargon and legal mumbo jumbo and FBI speak. But really, Brian, this is just the same recycled garbage that we have become used to. And it is an absolute shame that a federal magistrate signed off on this nonsense and trash to allow a unprecedented search of an election office that, let's not forget, then had the cameo of the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, doing this on an evidence truck.
Well, that was my question, is why in the world would a judge look at that rambling screed, the same lies that he surfaces at every campaign rally, and think that that's enough justification, enough of a predicate to sign off on this search warrant?
Yeah, so that's what really should be the next thing we focus on, right? The first thing we focus on is, what is in this affidavit, because the affidavit, unlike the original search warrant, the affidavit gives you all of the evidence that the government presented to a federal judge, or in this case, federal magistrate judge, and said, this is why we believe there is probable cause that supports the execution of a raid on an election office. Okay, so that's why this was such a big deal, the release of this document. And what you see throughout, it is just like one recycled election denier theory, another recycled election denier theory. This was all brought forward by yet another prominent election denier, a lawyer named Kurt Olson. Let me tell you, I first ran across Kurt Olson when he was a lawyer in 2020 who was asking the Department of Justice to sue in the Supreme Court to invalidate the election. When that didn't happen because that was too batshit crazy even for the Trump 1 Department of Justice, he then convinced Texas to do this. You may remember we oftentimes talk about this Texas lawsuit to try to invalidate the elections in 4 other states. Well, that was rejected out of hand by the Supreme Court. Next I knew about Kurt Olson, he was representing Carrie Lake in her election contest in Arizona, which my law firm represented the sitting governor, Governor Hobbs, Katie Hobbs, and beating Kurt Olson in court. And he was spouting all kinds of nonsense there. Well, now he works in the White House and seems to be the instigator behind this. But Brian, you put your finger on it, which is if a federal judge is going to give, and you and I have talked about this before, the presumption of regularity, the good faith assumption that when an FBI agent walks in and says, Judge, we have this and we have this and we have this, if they're going to give the good faith assumption to the government on this, then man, we are in for a long election season, because this affidavit is as thin as they come. It is thinner than this one single sheet of paper. And let me tell you, when we get to the fall and they want to raid other election offices, they're going to have paper just as thin.
And I want to get to that point right now, but first, a quick note that no one else in the media is covering this to the extent that Mark and his team are covering this, and they're doing it on Democracy Docket, which is the news outlet Mark founded to focus on everything voting elections. Please make sure to sign up, subscribe if you are not yet subscribed, because this is the way that you can stay on top of this stuff. Again, it's being ignored largely by legacy media. If you want to get into the details of this stuff, which is hugely important right now, Democracy Docket is the way to go, so I'm going to put that link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Mark, that's the part that I think worries me a little bit, is that if, we often talk about, even if it's not precedent, just the atmospheric precedent of, okay, now they have some legal framework to be able to do this elsewhere. If they were successful here, can't they go, to other elections offices and say, oh, well, look, a judge agreed with us here, And so there's no reason not to agree with us in Detroit, in Milwaukee, in Philadelphia, in any other jurisdiction.
In Maricopa County.
Maricopa County, right.
County. Remember, that's where I said I ran into, my law firm ran into this guy there after the 2022 gubernatorial election. But you remember the lies that were spread in Maricopa County in 2020?
Yeah.
All those crazy theories. I mean, I just wouldn't be surprised if we saw him show up, or we saw him inspire FBI agents and Department of Justice prosecutors to seek additional search warrants, both as they relate to the 2020 election, which is bad enough, right? It's bad enough that this has happened with respect to the ballots in 2020. But here's the thing, Brian. What you call the precedent, or what I'll call the template, right? The template of what they use to get this search warrant, I believe they are now going to use not just to go back and relitigate 2020, but to try to search and seize ballots in the 2026 election, both in the run-up and in potentially the aftermath. My law firm, we keep kicking their ass on these efforts to get the voter rolls. They just had another loss. And everyone, by the way, needs to subscribe to this channel, because Brian and I are going to do a video about a shocking loss that they had in Michigan. And you're not going to want to miss it, because this one is a ride like you haven't seen before. And I'm proud of it. So make sure you're subscribed to this channel and hit the bell to get alerted when there's new content, because you're not going to want to miss that or any of the other content we do. But Brian, that is the kind of thing that I'm worried now. They may say, look, we can't get these voter rolls by going the normal way, by suing and having Mark Elias and his team kick our ass and prevent us. How do we know they're not going to go and try and get search